Good morning, Craig Howard here. Happy to be with you again this morning. I read a story and it caught my attention because it was a physician in Philadelphia, and many of you know much of my family lives in the Philadelphia area. Um, but it was about a physician by the name of Paul Offit. Paul was a pediatric physician. He was a vaccinologist specialist, so he specialized in vaccines and vaccinating children and um, he worked at the university. I think it was the University of Pennsylvania, um, but he became very upset with Christianity when a couple of churches in the Philadelphia area, a couple of big Catholic churches, or I don't know if they're Catholic or not, a couple of big churches that had big schools attached to them, for whatever reason, refused to allow vaccinations in their school. And there was an outbreak of measles that came about that caused a lot of kids in that area to suffer with measles, in his opinion, very unnecessarily. I'm not here to debate the right or wrong of vaccine or what that church did, those churches did. That's not the thing, but it turned him so against religion that he literally began to write a book entitled Bad Faith: How Religious Belief Undermines Modern Medicine. And he was really upset. He really believed that Christianity was the bane of the medical society because it interfered with what medicine was trying to do. So in the course of his research for his book, he began to read the Bible, and he came across the passages where Jesus verbally and physically began to support the children that were around him. And this was during the time of the Roman Empire, when infanticide was allowed. I mean, it was part of Roman practice. Children were nothing more than property to their parents. Parents were known to sell their children at that time to get some extra money to, you know, do whatever they needed to do or wanted to do. Children had no place of honor, or no place of, I don't want to say value, because they valued them financially, but they weren't, in many homes. I shouldn't say in all homes because I hate to generalize, but in many homes in the Roman Empire, children were just another piece of property. And then he reads how Jesus stood up for the children. And literally, as he read the scriptures and read how Jesus stood up for the children, he was brought to tears, and he made this statement. He said, independent of whether you believe in the existence of God, or you have to be impressed, independent of whether you believe in the existence of God, you have to be impressed with the man described as Jesus of Nazareth. At, at the time of his life, one historian said that child abuse was the crying voice of the Roman Empire, infanticide was common, abandonment was common. That's because children were property, no different than slaves. But Jesus stood up for children, cared about them when those around him typically didn't. He changed the title and the focus of his book to say, when religion interferes with medicine. Not that it always does. Jesus had a very clear take on children. Jesus made the statement in Matthew chapter 19, verse 13 to 15. It says, when people brought little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them, but the disciples rebuked them, and Jesus said, let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. When he placed his hands on them, he went on from there. It saddens me that while there are some churches that are doing a great job of focusing on children's ministries, it saddens me that over the years, not intentionally, wasn't a planned event, but somewhere along the line, we stopped realizing that we really needed to make a concerted effort to reach children and youth. And consequently, there are churches all over the country that have no kids left in them. And it doesn't have to be that way. It just takes work. You can't just take for granted that young families are going to come to church now. You can't just take for granted that teens are going to come to church now. You have to work at it. It has to be something that you put effort towards. And it's not something that many churches are doing. We do a Wednesday night children's program. We do a youth program. We do a children's church program. And I'm not bragging about these things. I'm just thinking about different things that churches could do. We've got Bible school coming up, not next week, or not this week, but next week. We start Bible school, and that's something we put a lot of effort into. But, how hard are we working how hard are all of us working at showing the love to children and youth that Jesus did? Could we do better? I think so, including me and including our church. We need to keep that focus there, because once we lose the kids, we lose the church. Something to think about. God bless you today. Have a great day. Mom and Dad, if you're watching, I love you. My dad's in the hospital. Please keep my dad in your prayers. And I'd appreciate that. Thank you.